How much should you spend on a guitar? Guitar players are often faced with this question. How much should I spend on a guitar? Not how much you can. That's a totally different question, but how much you should, which means that we have to understand the guitar price tag versus the guitar value dynamics. And the truth is that with prices ranging from under $100 to tens and thousands of dollars, it can be difficult to determine where the sweet spot actually is. So in this video, let's talk about the price of a guitar versus the quality of the guitar, so that hopefully you, in your next purchase, can make a more informed decision and get more bang for your dollar. How does that sound? Sounds good? Let's get started. First things first, let's agree that the term good guitar means differently for different people. For example, you could gift me the best, the most expensive hollow body Gretsch guitar. Now, I mostly play metal and rock music. Sometimes I play some other things, but mostly I'm a rock and metal player. That Gretsch guitar might be a jazz player's dream, but it doesn't have that much value to me. Or another example is that imagine you like thin necks on electric guitars. Now imagine I'll give you the best, the craziest guitar, but with a fat chunky neck. You get the point, right? Won't have that much value. So good guitar has a different meaning for different people depending on what they want out of that guitar. Secondly, guitar quality and its price tag follow the law of diminishing returns. Let me explain. On the y-axis, we have the good old dollar. And on the x-axis, we have guitar quality. Guitar quality. My gosh, look at that handwriting. And the relationship goes like this. This is what this chart means. So imagine we're at a price point here. Let's just say this is $200, right? $200 is equivalent of this much guitar quality, right? Now, if I make this 200, say 300, so we go here, now we are at 300, right? So 300. The jump from $200 to $300 means this much change in quality that I'm circling in red. Now, this time, let's just say we're going to go from $6,000 to, say, $7,000. So here we go. That's $7,000. You notice now that as we went from $6,000 to $7,000, there is less improvement in the guitar quality. And this is the law of diminishing returns. So basically what we're saying here is that in the lower price ranges, as you jump up, say, from $200 to $400 or $300 to $700, that change in the price tag is more likely to correlate with an improvement in your guitar quality. Whereas if you're at a $6,000, $7,000 price range, and you go from $6,000, $7,000 to, say, $100,000, right? That improvement in the quality of the guitar is very minimal, if existent at all. A lot of times, and I've witnessed this myself, more expensive guitar actually doesn't mean a better quality. This is the law of diminishing returns. And by the way, if this still didn't make sense, that's absolutely fine. Comment and let me know, and I'm more than happy to elaborate it in a different way. Thirdly, and this is where things start to get really interesting, you have to consider that different guitar brands have different sweet spots. A $500 guitar across different brands and manufacturers don't have the same quality. As an example, I'm a firm believer that $500 PRS SE guitars are much more superior in quality if you compare them with a $500 Jackson. Now, you don't have to agree with me on this point, but the point I'm trying to make here is that $500 across different brands, or any amount across different brands, means different quality. BC Rich used to be known as this boutique, high-end, high-quality guitar manufacturer. And they had this amazing, awesome shapes that they were unique, and a lot of people loved them, and artists played them. And then at some point, BC Rich decided to produce lower-end guitars so that their guitar is available for a broader audience at a more affordable price. The problem was that their low-end guitars were really bad. They were not good quality guitars at all, and you could go with the same price, get a far better guitar. And this really hurt BC Rich's brand and brand recognition. I gave you this example so you keep in mind that different guitar brands do have a different sweet spot. And this is something to consider when you purchase your next guitar, but also keep in mind that a lot of the times the pricings don't make sense at all. And an example of that is ESP guitars. ESP guitars are great guitars. A lot of famous artists play them, and they're very, very big. At some point, they made the decision to create a sub-brand called LTD. And the point of LTD was to do two things: provide ESP guitars at a more affordable price to a broader audience, but without hurting the ESP brand, to sort of protect that main brand in case something goes wrong, so that the ESP, the main brand, is still associated with high quality guitars. And a lot of other companies have done it. For example, Fender has Squier, Music Man has Sterling. You get the point. Now, ESP guitars were produced in Japan and in the United States, but then in 2014, a decision was made to introduce a new sub-brand called the E2 to represent high-quality production guitars that are made in Japan. So now you have your high-end guitars that are made in Japan and USA, you have your E2, and then you have your LTD guitars, which are the more affordable models that are made in Indonesia. Now check this out, and this was brought up in NAMM 2025 this year in January. This is a prime example of why these pricings don't make much of a sense. So for example, you have ESP LTD Bill Kelleher's guitar, and this is at $2,000 on the Sweetwater website. Forget about the signature artist or whatever not. Look at the specs. You have the mahogany body. You don't know what type of mahogany it is. It's certainly not Cuban mahogany, the original mahogany. Top material is maple, gloss finish, 22 frets, 25-inch scale, LTD locking tuners, and Mojotone Hellbender humbuckers. Compare that with this ESP E2, which is also $2,000. Reviews are obviously better. So if I look at the reviews first things first of people who purchased it, it does have better reviews. Now, let's look at the specs of this thing. It has an alder body, maple neck, thin U, 12 inches, 24 frets, and 25.5-inch. So if you play rock and metal, that's already a far better guitar. It's a bone nut. And then you have the Gotha Tune-o-matic bridge and the Gotha locking tuners. So those who know. And the bridge pickup is the gold standard EMG 81 humbucker, right? What more can you ask for if you're a rock or metal player? These two guitars are nowhere near each other. I'll take this guitar any day. And the fact that the price for these two is the same does not make any sense whatsoever. And bear in mind that these specs are just the stuff that we see online on the website. Those who have played with Japanese-made ESP guitars before know this very well, that the build quality between these two guitars are not the same. Another interesting thing I want to draw your attention to are the newer brands that are fighting for market share. And these are not necessarily new companies or anything. They're just newer and they're fighting for market share. For example, Schecter Guitars is fighting for some of ESP's market share, dare I say. And so as a result of that, you'll see that Schecter will produce guitars at a lower profit so they can take some of ESP's customers. And this is why you see, for example, in Schecter guitars that have the same price as a lot of LTDs, you get features such as stainless steel frets. So if you're open to purchasing your guitars from brands that are not Fender or Gibson, like big established brands, there is a good possibility that you will get a better bang for your buck, because those companies are there to, take some of that market share. And the best way to do that is to sell your guitars at almost no profit, especially if you're like a newcomer. Now, the downside of that is that a lot of times that guitar won't have that much of a resale value, because still a lot of people would want to go for the, more established, more recognizable brand. So if you get a guitar from an unknown brand or lesser known brand and you want to sell it later on, the resale value of it might be not as much as you hoped it to be. Another thing to keep in mind is that established companies and manufacturers have established processes and quality controls, right? So if you get a guitar from a more established brand, you're more likely to see a established, sort of well-performing quality control. I mean, obviously there are some examples that this is not the case. Gibson, Gibson quality control. Sorry. There are scenarios where this might not be true, but established brands, more often than not, have established protocols for quality control and things of that nature. So you have to keep that in mind as well. Got a little mischievous there, huh? So let's bring it all home. I like to categorize guitars' prices in the following way. Anything from $500 or less is low end. Anything between $500 and $2,000 is mid-high. Anything from $2,000 to $4,000 is high end for $5,000, and then anything above that is luxury item. So the first question I ask myself when I want to go and buy a new guitar, and believe me, I've bought a few, right? The first question I ask is, why am I buying this guitar for? So, for example, is this for gigging? Is this for recording at home? Is this a gift for a person? Is this something that I just want to use twice a week to play some chords on? Make that decision, because that decision does really shape the way that you'll purchase the next guitar. So, for example, if I want to use a guitar for gigging, I want a guitar that is tight, that is accurate and stable, but I don't want an overly expensive guitar. I don't want an expensive guitar for gigging because it'll get damaged as you move it around. You're performing in a venue, some drunk guy just throws his beer bottle at you. You put it in a car at night to go and have some dinner after the gig, and somebody breaks the glass and just take all your equipment away, and all that money is gone. Or, very commonly, a lot of people just want to buy a guitar to play it like twice a week, play some Ed Sheeran songs or play some chords here and there, sing for their girlfriends. This is not a person that is seriously pursuing guitars. This is a person that is just once in a while wants to hang out. Well, if I'm that person, investing thousands of dollars in a guitar doesn't make any sense. I would probably go for the low-end guitars. So once you made up your mind and you know what you want this guitar for, you're a little bit more clear on what the price range is. The next step is to go on and play different brands, different guitars, as many as you possibly can in that price range. And what it does, it not only gives you this experience of trying different things so you better understand what works for you or not, it also gives you an idea of where the sweet spot of different brands are, right? And you don't have to buy a new guitar to play it, right? You can just go to a guitar center, you can go to a guitar store in person and just play with a few. A vast majority of guitar stores, they're more than happy to help you. They'll just give you the guitar as long as you're not bashing it around, you're going to be okay. They'll let you play. Now, as you're playing those guitars and figuring out what body shape works for you, what neck shape works for you, thickness, and so on and so forth, also you have to keep in mind, what is the sound that you're looking for, right? What kind of music you listen to, what guitarists you listen to, and those guitar players, what is their sound like? Once you do this, that is, knowing what you want that guitar for, and knowing what kind of sounds you like, and then playing with different guitars, once you do this, I guarantee you that you will find a guitar that is in that sweet spot, that is very good in value in relation to its price tag. Almost always, when somebody buys a guitar and shortly after starts to think like, oh, maybe this guitar doesn't worth the money that I paid for it, almost always, it's because number one, they either didn't know what they wanted that guitar for, number two, they didn't know what sound they were going for, and number three, they didn't play with enough guitars to understand what works for them or not. When you're buying your next guitar, if you don't do these three important things, you're speculating. Don't speculate. You'll get a better bang for your buck, and you'll have a good value purchase every time you buy a new guitar, all day, every day. I hope this video provided you some value. I hope this video helped you with your next guitar purchase. And with that said, Thanks so much for hanging out. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care of yourself.